Welcome to the inHoPE podcast, where each Monday we drop a new episode to help strengthen unity in the body of Christ. We want you to be part of the conversation, so make sure you comment, like, share, and follow. I am your host, Preach. We got a great conversation for you today. Let's get into it. I feel like you do a lot. Like you juggle, a few different things.
Yeah.
I know you go travel and speak at times.
Right.
You have a couple different ministries you have your hands in. So, but still, I have experienced you making yourself available.
Right.
And so I've appreciated that. I feel like that's really big, especially when you're talking about creating unity amongst people. You have to be willing to have that space to build a relationship.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, honestly, is this an intentional thing? Is this something where you've kind of sat down and have intentionally made space and say, I'm going to keep my schedule, loose, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, no. So I mean, it actually is kind of a value, and where it came from is when I was looking at planting a church, I got put in this training cohort for like a 2-year thing. And what it looked like is like basically every year, about every 6 months, we would go and spend a week at this kind of mountain ranch in Montana.
Nice.
And a couple guys, particularly Dr. Dwight Smith.
Okay.
He's a missiologist. He's done tons of stuff overseas, a bunch of stuff here too. Him and another guy, Dr. Soper. There's a few other guys involved in stuff as well, but basically they were saying like, hey, we want to invest into the next generation of leaders. This would have been like, 2008-ish, and stuff. And when they were going over stuff, they kind of instilled in me a couple values.
Yeah.
Okay? And one of those was this idea that like even when you're starting a church or planting a church or leading a church, the kind of idea was like, hey, do you want to run a church or reach a city? And they asked that question.
That's a good question.
And I'm like,
that's a really good question.
Like, whoa, okay. That's, like in my mind, I hadn't gone there. I was like, well, I'm just going to start a church and I have these cool ideas, all that kind of stuff. And they're like, well, that's not the point. The point is to see a place reach for Jesus. So they kind of use this phrase, every man, woman, and child. Right. And so this idea of gospel saturation. And so that started kind of taking, it took me a while to kind of get there because I'm like, well, I'm just trying to do a church and this is and then they asked a couple other questions that kind of went with that. Okay. And first question was, what is it that God actually wants? Right? Because a lot of times we go into this whole church world and it's like, well, here's what I want. Here's the kind of ministry I want. Here's the dynamic I want. Here's how I want to do things. And so they said, well, what do you think God wants? Like when God's looking down in an area, in a sea, what do you think he wants for this area? Not just what you think is cool or what you think you want to see produced in a church, the structures, the programs, all that kind of stuff. What is it that God wants? And then follow-up question, what would it look like if God got what he wanted? How might you be part of that? And so so one of the values that kind of comes out of that naturally is what God wants for an area, a city, is he wants everyone exposed to the gospel.
Absolutely.
And the reality is that is not going to happen by me alone. Like just Boise metro area, 800,000 people. I'm not going door to door to 800,000 people.
Absolutely.
Right? And even if I were to go door to door, that would probably not be effective in communicating the gospel. Right? And by the time I even started doing that, people would be moving in and out and stuff.
Exactly.
But the reality is the only way we can reach a whole city is if not only every church is engaged, but every Christian's engaged. In living out, the ideals of the kingdom, right where they're at. So there actually is a lot of intentionality in kind of my thinking about that, because I'm like, okay, this mandates me not just planting a church. This mandates me to say, hey, how do I got to find other gospel-oriented people? And I got to hang out with them, and I got to partner with them. So like even on our website, one of our, I think we have 7 or 8 values as a church. One of them is church partnership. We also have like one called telescoping, which takes me other places throughout the world. Right. So like I'll be going to Sri Lanka in November.
Nice.
And stuff to meet with pastors and, help collaborate in this because what does God want?
Yeah, exactly.
He wants every man, woman, child. So that means not only 800,000 people in the Boise Metro.
Yeah.
That's 8 billion people.
Exactly.
Worldwide or whatever the number. I don't know what the current number is, but it's something like that. So anyway, so that's been kind of ingrained in my heart. And so I've been wanting to, I always kind of say, I try to bang the drum of like, hey, we need to do this together.
Yeah.
Which makes me have to interact with churches that are not quite like mine. I mean, like they definitely got to be gospel centered churches,
Yeah. I hear you.
Go outside of that. But it really pushes me to say, hey, who's doing this? Who's open to this type of collaboration?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that there has been a lot of intentionality for that stuff. And fortunately, I found some other like-minded people.
Yeah.
When I first started planting and stuff, I found Monty Ralston, and he had been leading, church unity stuff for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So I can kind of stand on the shoulders of that. Other organizations, working with that, and stuff. And so anyway, so that's been kind of how I got involved in that. But it's really that simple question.
Wow.
What does God want?
Yeah.
What would it look like if God got what he wanted?
Mm.
And so, so that's really kind of changed my mind about things of, when I was younger, it was like, oh, I'm going to be a cool pastor and lead a big church.
Yeah.
Right? That's the dream, right? and that dream has been squashed.
Yeah.
But I think maybe given a bit more biblical dream, not that there's anything necessarily wrong with anyone who has a big church, but like, but God kind of put a vision in me of like, well, no, Dusty, what I'm calling you to do is these things here, and you need to be the one champion that, because not everyone is necessarily called. I think everyone's called for church unity and doing stuff. John 17. Jesus' priestly prayer, of like, hey, we got to do this together. That's how the world is going to know, and that's how the word's going to get out and stuff, and the gospel's going to get preached, and we're going to reach them through our unity. But anyway, that's something personally I feel like I can't not do. Yeah. Right. And stuff. Anyway, so that's kind of how I got going with that kind of stuff.
I love that question. I mean, all three of those questions really that they laid out for you.
Yeah.
And this idea of, are you going to plant a church or are you going to reach a city?
Yeah.
And as you're going through those questions, something that comes to my mind is it really takes us sitting back and thinking hard and trying to dissect.
Right.
Because I think so quickly we could try to lump that all into one thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I am reaching the city by planting this church. Like,
I am doing that thing. Yeah. So, but there's, like I said, there's kind of some like logical flows of that. Like, if you really think about it, you're like, there's no way I personally am doing this. And even like if you think of, the biggest church in any city, they're not getting to everyone.
No.
Right.
No,
biggest church
absolutely
might be, in our area, 4,000 or 5,000. That's a huge church.
Yeah.
4,000 or 5,000 of 800,000.
Yeah.
Is a drop in the bucket. I mean, like it's obviously a very good effort, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the numbers,
that's not even a percentage
wise.
Yeah, that's not even 1%.
Yeah.
Right.
So
and so
1%. Like I said, it's a great move of God, all that kind of stuff. But it's like, okay, what really is? We need this person and this person and this person.
Exactly.
In reality, like even in our area, it's like, hey man, on the whole, entire west side of our valley, they're probably not coming all the way over to hang out with me anyway.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so anyway, so it just really kind of makes you think of different things, make you think of church partnership. It makes you kind of think of geography some as well.
Yeah.
So church unity kind of needs to involve some kind of level of geography because, 40 minutes that way.
Exactly.
They're probably not going to drive out to where I'm at.
Exactly.
There might be a handful of people that do, but most people they're not going to go more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
Exactly.
Anyway, so that kind of needs to play into the thought as well of like, okay, so then how do we work together with even take it even down more neighborhood level?
Exactly.
Right? Like, hey, this part of the city, this part of the metro, hey, can pastors work together in that? And that's what we're trying to kind of work on these days is like, hey, how do we get the guys, connected within this couple miles of geography that have a church here, and stuff, and so
that's really cool.
Anyway, so once you start kind of thinking that way, it just makes you kind of draw some conclusions of like, okay, so we got to do this. If the goal is to reach every man, woman, child, then it's going to take this. So I was just in Atlanta, just last week, talking about this stuff.
Okay.
So I'm kind of part of an organization called Christ Together as well. And basically what they're doing is they want to help cities do this and stuff. And so we all got together for a powwow.
Nice.
Just going over, hey, what does it look like to do this kind of stuff? Some reps from New Thing were there as well.
Nice.
John Ferguson was kind of our keynote speaker, just talking about, hey, how do you take it down to a, just like an individual level? How do you mobilization was kind of the focus of this one.
So you were saying every believer needs to be involved. If this is going to happen.
Yeah, it's
everyone has to be.
It's not just through your professional pulpiteers.
Exactly.
It's like unless it gets down to just regular people living on mission.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
It's impossible.
It literally, like, it's just not going to happen because we just need the relationships that every person has.
Yeah.
Like I'm assuming close to every person in our area probably knows a Christian. Right?
Yeah.
Or close to.
Exactly.
Right? Or knows someone, like at least one degree of separation. But I would suspect that everyone probably knows one.
Yeah.
And so if all those Christians were mobilized, be like, hey, part of your kind of Christian job, kind of your ministry is those people. But often we just say, oh no, we just leave ministry for our Sunday morning experience or something like that. But really we need this mobilization. So
exactly.
So John was talking about kind of this idea of blessing others, like we're made to be a blessing, Genesis 12. The Abraham call.
Exactly. Right.
And we're just kind of living that out, and so kind of this whole idea of church unity is like, hey, how do we mobilize all of us to be a blessing? So they kind of talked about that BLESS acronym,
really cool.
which I really like. The BLESS, B, begin in prayer, be praying for those.
Come on now.
L, listen to people. Christians, we need to be a lot better at listening.
Yeah.
We talk too much. Right? we talk too much as we're on a podcast, but this is good.
This is a good time to talk.
This is a good time to talk, right? But we can talk too much, and we just need to become better at listening. Tell me your story. What's going on in your life? What's happening? And I think even that you begin in prayer and you listen. You learn to be an intercessor.
Yeah.
So I'm part of another organization called Church Partnership Evangelism. It's really just practicing. Hey, how do I pray for people, be an intercessor? Not start off even the thought of us being an evangelist. It's like, well, no. First, I gotta be an intercessor. I gotta know you. I gotta care for you. I gotta figure out how I can pray for you.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's the idea. Begin in prayer. Listen to their stories so you can do that more effectively. So that's the BL. Then the E is for eating.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. Right.
Man, we still haven't even got to evangelism. But you got
to eat, right? And everyone eats. Like one thing you have in common with every human on the planet, you all eat.
Exactly.
You might not have the same skin tone. You might not speak the same language.
Yeah.
But you eat.
Exactly.
So probably should do it with some other people.
Yeah.
And stuff. And then the first S is to serve them.
Yeah.
Okay? So as you pray for them, as you listen to them, as you spend time with them, then hey, how can I actually serve you? How can I do things for you? How can I be a blessing to you? And then finally the last S is I think if you do those things, you'll eventually get a chance to share your story.
Absolutely.
Which hopefully if you're a Christian, that
story
is around the gospel, right? The gospel story, your grace story.
Exactly.
And stuff. And so anyway, so just kind of how do we partner together, getting blessed type people out there in our world that can actually do this together and stuff. And so anyway, so we got to champion this stuff of like, hey, how do we do this together more effectively? Because the world's looking at us and they see fractures, they see splinters, they see church splits, they see disunity and stuff. And so we at least got to work towards doing what Jesus asked us to do.
Exactly.
I mean, I think
absolutely.
I think Jesus is a genius and he's my master. I'm like, I'm going to listen to that guy.
Yep.
Like even when you think about Christianity, it's the biggest organization in the history of the world.
Yeah. Right. The longest standing ongoing organization.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's also a decentralized one.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so decentralized. We'd have a very hard time tracing down to a key leader over the
Christians. Who's in charge of it right now?
Exactly.
hope no one's looking at me.
Right.
You don't want that. You don't want that. So
No, yeah. And so, it could only be him, which is why he's the head, right?
But, the Bible describes Jesus as the head of the organization. And we're just kind of underservants for that and stuff.
Exactly.
And so, but as underservants, we're called to have some level of unity together.
Yeah.
Like when another church wins, I win.
Exactly.
Because like how many churches are around in our valley? There's just one. Most people, oh no, there's this one.
Yeah.
Those are just different names that we kind of give it. But the reality is there's just one church in our area. Like when God's looking down, like that's I tell you that perspective. What does God want when He's looking down? What's He thinking?
Exactly. Like you see within Scripture when they're writing to different churches. Yeah. We just got into the book of Revelations, and they're writing to these different churches, and there's 7 churches. It's not because there were only 7 physical locations where these people were meeting. Yeah. These were towns. These were the cities, the metropolitan
church of that place.
Exactly.
And so so the Bible just kind of talks about it differently than we do. It's I guess fine for us to talk about it, but as long as it doesn't hinder us from saying, hey, no, we're actually part of the church. Yeah. In the in Boise. Part of the church in whatever city you're at. Yeah. And stuff. And so just kind of viewing it that way, I think that's actually helpful too. Yeah. Thinking about unity.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And when we think it that way, it's like, oh, dude, actually, even though my church has a different label, like we're actually on staff together.
Exactly.
Like that's the actual reality.
Right.
Is like, oh, I'm only a one staff church. No, the reality is like you're on staff with all the rest of the churches in here, and you got to find your spot, your kind of your niche of like where God is calling me to engage in that. And I think that's a helpful thing. I think that's one thing I've appreciated with as we meet with pastors, and I've spent time praying. Just different environments to do. Jeff Vanderstel has put out where he kind of calls them these kind of gates of that you can enter in with other pastors. Yeah. And one of them is prayer. One of them is kingdom good. Yeah. One of them is health for your pastors.
Nice.
Anyway, I think he has 5 of them total, but really helpful cool thing of like, hey, what are these gates that I can just kind of open up and enter into with hanging out with other pastors so that we can get knee to knee. Man, one of the most really cool biggest blessings that I've had in my life is, and I've been doing this for literally years. I moved to Boise 2010 to kind of plant and stuff. Yeah. One of the first things I was doing, I'm looking, where's other guys who are doing stuff? Okay. And my thought was, if there's no one doing it, I'm going to start an organization to do it. Yeah. Right. But I found some guys anyway. Nice. And so found some guys. And one of the things we just committed to is like, hey, almost every week we're going to get together and pray.
Nice.
Like just as a very minimum thing.
Yeah, exactly.
We've done other things of work projects and serving projects and collaborative worship experiences together, different things like that, over the years and stuff. But just to kind of the basic, like, hey, we're just going to get together, get knee to knee. Yeah. Usually just a handful of guys that just come and we just pray. Yeah. And just as this foundational thing of hey, if we can't pray together, I don't know what we can do together. If we can't go as simple and basic as just like pray. But the cool thing is when you get knee to knee with guys praying, a couple things happen. Yeah. Well, first thing is you engage with the God of the universe who can actually do things. Right. Yeah, that's one.
It's kind of a big deal.
God, but what kind of a big deal. Kind of a big deal. But what it also does is as you pray, you start hearing the hearts of them.
Absolutely.
And then you start building trust because you're like, dude, I've heard him pray. I've heard him pray for the people in his own congregation when he's struggling. Yeah. We'll talk about, what's going on in our families sometimes and how can we pray for each other, build each other up. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we have challenges with our kids and wives and stuff. Not that we're giving, all the nitty-gritty details of stuff necessarily. But it's like, hey, like I have someone who's going to support me. Yeah. Like as a leader and stuff, leaders are usually put like, no, you got to be the one to pray. How many people are praying for us? Yeah. Aside from our moms, right? Yeah. And some maybe you don't even have that. But so we get together and we pray. But then it also, like I said, it builds trust. Yeah. Because now it's like, man, I've heard you calling out and crying out week after week and stuff. And so it builds trust because like I've seen a glimpse of your heart. Yeah. And that only happens with intentionality. That only happens when we say, I'm going to be committed to doing this with you. And sometimes, that commitment to do stuff with you and doing what you want, it means I don't get what I want. Yeah. Right. Which to me is at the heart of the gospel, right?
Kind of.
like there's like, hey, consider others better than yourselves. You know, there's some pretty smart people who said those things.
Exactly.
You know? And so, anyway, so you just got to kind of engage in that kind of stuff. But it has to be intentional because I know, I know my calendar, right? And you kind of talked about, hey, you can do this on purpose. Yeah, I mark my calendar. I've arranged my calendar, and fortunately, I have a lot of flexibility within our church structure.
Yeah.
And part of it was intentional.
Yeah.
Because I value this.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to how you see your church being part of God's plan, right?
Yeah.
And the values that you place on your church.
Right.
Your calendar has to work with that.
Right. That's why you have a value. Yeah. Like I said, it's literally a stated value.
Yeah.
Church partnership is a stated value, one of our main core values. Because I was like, I have to cook this in here.
Yeah.
Well, one, because I think Jesus asked us to, right? You can't read John 17 and not have that as value. I don't think.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so it's got to be in there as a value, and then that fleshes itself out
exactly
in our calendars. And so
that's good.
You know, because there's lots of things we can do and time demands and all that kind of stuff.
So easy. Right? We don't have struggle filling a calendar.
No.
That's easy.
Yeah. I mean, except for maybe like the first 6 months when I was a church planner.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out calendar because I had no people.
Yeah.
Really, we came over with a couple of families, and so I'm like, okay, I'm working on the website again.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be lazy here and stuff, but like, you know, as you get going to stuff, it's like, man, there's all kinds of stuff that you can spend time with.
Yeah.
And so that was a conscious decision. It's like, hey, I'm going to carve, you know, I like to think of it this way. And I've heard, this isn't my idea, but I've heard some other people say, it's like, hey, tithe 10% of your time to building church unity. Right. That's a simple thing.
That's good.
So you work, you know, 40, 50 hours. That's 4 or 5 hours a week.
Yeah.
One of the things that I can do as a leader that's helpful for the kingdom in an area is I can tithe my time, you know, about 10% to building that out, you know. And so currently I'm serving with the Valley Network, which is kind of a cool conglomeration. There was the City Network, started up by Robert Frazier and some other guys and stuff. And I've been part of Treasure the Valley for years. I was started by Monty, you know, just amazing works of just like, hey, we need to do this. Yeah. And stuff, and different emphasis, you know, with church planning involved in there, and just unity and prayer. Anyway, so we kind of decided, hey, let's merge this together because, you know, we just need to work together. Yeah, because that's the only way. Yeah, it's just the only way that we're going to move the ball down the field and stuff. And so, anyway, so I'm spending my time in that. Like I said, I'm spending my time with a missions organization overseas. Yeah, I mean, it's just simple, you know, Acts 1 stuff of hey, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, ends the earth. And so I kind of like to have my hand in a little bit of all those, you know. So planted a church in my Jerusalem, you know, I even see kind of, you know, so I do the micro church thing, and so we have different networks, stuff going out in different places, you know, in our Samarias, you know, different people not like us, exactly, you know, and then kind of our, you know, our regional thing with Valley Network and stuff, and then with Church Partnership Evangelism, I do overseas stuff. Anyway, so it kind of gets me connected with all those things that it talks about in Scripture and stuff. And anyway, that's one thing I've just found has given me like a lot of intentional missional purpose. Yeah, you know, so I've kind of draw circles around, you know, like, hey, man, there's people I pray for. Exactly. I literally get a prayer prompt in the morning. I have two different spots. I love prayer prompts because they just help me pray and stuff. And so I have a couple different ways. So I get one in the morning that has me pray specifically. So there's usually 1 or 2 people that I want to disciple. Yeah. And I want to pray for. And sometimes they're early believers, new believers. Sometimes they're not yet believers and stuff. And so I get a prayer prompt on my calendar. Yeah. I think at 9 a.m. it's just like, hey, Dusty, remember this guy? Yeah. And stuff. And so then also there's the Bless Rhythms app. They came up with an app. So it's called the Bless app. What? It's amazing. So what it does is it gives you basically it will help you draw a map of your street, your neighborhood. Oh, come on now. And so every morning it will give me 5 people to pray for on my street. Wow. I mean, it's a little Big Brother creepy because like, how do you know? But it's all public knowledge, right? It's in the white pages, right? Remember, like back in the day, they used to like literally mail you a big giant book. Exactly. Of everyone's phone numbers and addresses. So it's like, it's not, okay, let's chill. You know, so it's just that information and stuff. And it's like, hey, gives you a prayer prompt. Yeah. At 10:02, I put another prayer prompt for Luke 10:2, really right? Cool. Harvest is plentiful, workers are few. Exactly. Pray for that. So I got a prayer prompt for that, right? Anyway, so I kind of try to have that keeping me thinking of these things, praying for these things, and stuff throughout the day.
Yeah.
Personally, right? Because like I don't want to tell anyone to do something I'm not willing to do.
Exactly.
Right. This is kind of basics as a church leader, but also even as someone who wants to network and partner with other churches. Like, I don't want to be like, oh yeah, you should partner with other churches. Well, Dusty, what do you do? Well, I don't actually do it myself. Right. But you should. I'm too busy.
You should do it.
I'm too good for those things.
So you need to do it.
Yeah. So you should do it and stuff. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I just want to be faithful and be like, hey, here's the rhythms of life.
Yeah.
That I think God puts. And one of those rhythms, at least for me, is like, man, I'm going to find ways to partner with other pastors and sometimes, meet up with them, meet up with ministry leaders. I mean, I was literally just meeting with a guy yesterday who's helping oversee InterVarsity on Boise State campus.
Nice.
Matthew is his name.
Yeah.
Awesome dude. And just kind of hearing some of his, he was hearing some of mine. It's like, oh man, there's some really cool stuff that's happening. And hey, when we build relationship, we can then envision like, hey, what can we do together maybe at some point?
Yeah.
Maybe it won't work out perfectly, but just even being aware and being relationally connected.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of us grew up and you kind of had this feeling, with our denominational setup in the US that like you're the only real denomination, right? You're like all the other ones there's like, well, I think maybe they'll make it to heaven,
right?
Maybe, but we're the real true one.
Yeah.
We really have our theology figured out. Our doctrine is the best doctrine, and our methodology is better than theirs.
Yeah.
Right. And so as a kid, you kind of watch. Like I'm a pastor's kid, so I kind of grew up. But my dad really modeled me. Like he was always looking to like, hey, how do we do stuff together? Hey, how do we do an Easter thing together? Right. So So I guess that's another thing that got instilled with me was just watching my dad, because he was always like, hey, one church Sunday, and just different things like that, where he was always kind of just seeing that.
That's big.
And so anyway, I mean,
to be able to pass that down.
Reflecting on some of that my dad really helped me out with that.
That's good.
And seeing that model for me.
Yeah.
Because that's what we got to be able to do, is just model those things. Yep. And I think even because I hear this said about the Boise Metro from other cities, like, wow, you got really cool things happening.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has just been because that was modeled. Like going all the way back to I think the early 90s, where they started praying together. Yeah. Started doing their first prayer summits together. Yeah. Just different things to get pastors together. Exactly. And I think a lot of the younger guys grew up being like, oh yeah, well, church unity, that's just
that's what we
do. Normal.
Exactly.
That's normal.
Yeah. And then you see people come in from outside of this area and they're like, this isn't normal.
That's not normal. Yeah. Right. And stuff.
Exactly.
So anyway, so I think that's kind of a cool thing to see the history of that, and then getting to kind of like, oh wow, I hope we can pass that on. Well, I had this realization, at the conference I was at the other week and stuff. I'm like, man, I'm not necessarily young anymore.
Oh, come on.
Well, no. Let me. So I'm 45. Full disclosure.
Okay.
I'm 45, and I'm like, dude, I'm middle aged, is what it is. I have college age students or kids, students. I guess they're students, but my sons are college age. One is about to get married and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, we have to start working now to start passing this on.
Wow.
To who's coming next.
Yeah.
And that's going to take intentionality.
Yeah.
Right. Because what church unity needs, like if one generation has it and we don't pass it on to the next generation.
Exactly.
Then they don't have it.
Yep.
I mean, it's just how everything is. It's one generation. Like Christianity is one generation from extinction.
Yeah.
Always. Right. This is why it's like, no, we need to be thinking. This has actually been bugging me a lot of just the landscape of like, hey, how do we find younger people and build into them and stuff like that? This is something that those things that like keep you up at night, those conviction stuff.
No,
not like, are the Niners going to beat the Chiefs and stuff.
Of course,
but that might keep me up too. But really more importantly, is like, man, what's what's the future going to be for my kids? What are we providing a space for them to really encounter Christ and for their friends to encounter Christ, and how do we go about doing that and stuff? Anyway, so that's been kind of
how are we instilling that?
And how are we instilling that?
How are we guiding that process? The two things that come to my mind is first in Deuteronomy 6. Where God is telling them to teach these things to your kids, and it's very intentional. He's talking about when you wake up, when you lie down, when you walk out by the way, write them on your hands, write them. He's like, surround this, just inundate them with this, right?
Yeah, those everyday parts of life. Yeah,
exactly. And then so we see they make that part of their life. Right. And they show that, they bring their kids into that, and so they're passing it down to that next generation. Yeah. But then we also see within Kings, Chronicles. I'm reading Jeremiah right now. Just jumped into Jeremiah. Oh yeah. So just jumped into Jeremiah. Literally, like out in the car just now. I was reading Jeremiah 1, Jeremiah 2. Jeremiah 2 has some heat in there,
dude. Jeremiah, man, you got to feel a little salty after reading that.
Right, exactly. But in Jeremiah 1, just the opening, it mentions who he is and when he prophesied.
Right.
And it mentions starting in the time of Josiah, King Josiah, and then it going down to his next two sons when the exile happened.
The exile happens,
right? And so what's interesting about that is you see this throughout Chronicles, Kings, is you'll have these times of a good king, right? And Jerusalem's doing good.
Things are going well.
Things are going well. And then next king comes in, and like you said, next generation. And all of a sudden, it just goes downhill really fast, really strong. Yeah. And that's interesting because Josiah, he was one of those kings, right? Yeah. Like he was one of those kings that turned things around, great reforms, and all this amazing stuff. God moves on his behalf, gets Assyria out of there.
Unbelievable stuff.
Unbelievable stuff. His son doesn't follow in his footsteps, and then his son doesn't, and that whole nation is gone.
Yeah, just like that.
Just like that.
Just like that. Right after one of the best kings in history. Right?
Right? And so it's amazing how quickly, if that is not passed down to the next generation, it's amazing how quickly all those things that were being built up. And Solomon talks about this, right? Yeah. Like he's in his, depressing state. and in Ecclesiastes, he's like, what good is it to be a wise king? No one knows if the king after you is going to be foolish and ruin everything.
He might ruin it all. Yeah. There's some other interesting things in Jeremiah as well regarding the shepherds and stuff. Yeah. So there's a couple different kind of rebukes in there, not only from the king, but the shepherds, which I think has a bit more tie-in, directly with us, and stuff as well. But there's a rebuke on the shepherds of like, hey, you're not leading the people like you're supposed to.
Exactly.
Right. You're not doing the things that I want you to do. You're not modeling these things. You're not, taking them to God's word and stuff. Yeah. And I think that puts, kind of a thought, like as we think of our value in the area and stuff, is like, hey, really, what are we as pastors, ministry leaders, whatever title you want to give to them. I got some opinions on titles that I'm not going to go down this today.
No, we need to touch on that a little bit. So actually, that brings a thought back to when you were talking about. I love this idea of the bless acronym, right? Yeah. And that blessing app. I feel like it's so much easier, or I feel like it's more. People would be more willing to accept the idea of I'm going to be a blessing. It's my responsibility to be a blessing. Yeah. I feel like that is easier to receive than the idea of it's my job to be a missionary. Right. Or it's my job to be an evangelist. Right. While they're true, there's just a connotation to those words where I feel like some people...
a thought block.
Right? Yeah. There's a thought block there. That's a good way of putting it. But when you say... you're meant to be a blessing. Who doesn't want to receive that?
Yeah. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's why that one's kind of an easy one.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for kind of this idea of like, hey, us as shepherds, are we leading people into these things that they can, do the right thing rather than building up our own kingdoms and things like that? It's like, hey, can I just get down to this local level of like, hey, we're going to work at being a blessing. Yeah. And as the collective church, man, if we could do that, the other interesting thing in Jeremiah, I think it also kind of mentioned Ezekiel as well with this idea of kind of shepherds and the rebuke against them. There's also then a rebuke against the people because it kind of flows down from the shepherds to the people, but then also the people, God's like, well, I'm giving you bad shepherds because you don't seek me and stuff. And so this is where we really need to mobilize and get down to that base level. I mean,
absolutely.
Like unless it moves down to everyday Christians, which I would include myself in there. Like there's nothing really special about me. I'm very average. That's what I like to say. Like I'm very average, maybe even a little below average, but on the average spectrum. Like I'm not amazing at anything. And so it's like, well, but I can do this. Yeah. And so can you. Yeah. And so and then collectively, hey, can we do this together? Yeah. That's some of the thought process, and that's when hopefully we can get some movement in there. Like when you look at just kind of the stats and stuff. Barna's kind of study put out that Boise was I think the 24th most post-Christian city in the U.S. right? So it's like, wow, we got a lot of work to do.
Work to do. Yeah,
we got a lot of work to do, and the numbers are Christian influence is moving down.
Yeah,
right. Those proclaiming
especially Christ, as population grows.
Population grows.
It makes it harder for that to keep up,
right?
If we're not multiplying.
And this is one thing I've learned on overseas mission field.
Yeah,
especially in areas that are not as many Christians, which often means not as many pastors or missionaries. Staff people. What happens was when you're in those contexts and you find like another pastor, another believer, you're usually super excited.
Oh yeah,
because there's just a couple of you.
Yeah,
and you're like, the weight of like reaching all these people is so much that I have at least one more partner in ministry. This is wonderful. Here we just
double our efforts.
Doubled our efforts. Yeah. And so you think awesome. When you're in those kind of places, but a lot of times here we're thinking, oh, well, that church is competition.
Mm-hmm. As if there's not enough to go around.
Right. But the reality, but that's the reality. The reality is, from what we can tell, and stuff stat wise, like we're probably 8 to 10% Christian in the Treasure Valley.
Yeah.
Like a gospel believing, people and stuff, and just even in numbers in churches. Like you drive around Sunday morning and the streets are empty, right? You drive around 5 o'clock at night, it's traffic.
Exactly.
But Sunday morning is empty. Why? It's because no one's going to church.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like I said, there's some. But the reality is like 8 to 10%. That means there's, do the math, 800,000 people, say 10% of them are Christ followers.
Exactly.
That's 720,000 people.
Yeah.
No church is going to fill up. Like we don't have our biggest stadium is what, Albertson Stadium, 35-ish thousand.
We couldn't fit if we took that, we took the Ford Center.
Yeah.
We took all these different stadiums, the Hawk Stadium.
Yeah.
Fill up the Expo. We're still going to need more space.
We don't have enough space.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea that we're competing against other churches is kind of silly. Like, we need to kind of, get the vision that our brothers and sisters overseas have, where it's like, oh, you're another Jesus person.
Yeah.
Trying to reach people for Jesus. Yeah. Oh man, we need it so desperately.
Exactly.
This is also why we really need more church plants.
Mm-hmm.
We need more churches.
Yeah.
Because as people moving in, so they're saying 20,000 to 25,000 people a year moving in.
Yeah.
Right. And so just to keep up that 10%.
Yeah.
Just to keep up
the
10%, of probably the already Christians moving in.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't even think we're keeping up with that.
I mean, I'm trying to think now. I was talking with the guys from Frontiers Mission Organization.
Okay.
And they were saying similar. They were saying when you meet another Christian overseas, it's like Team Jesus. That's what they call it. They refer to it as Team Jesus because you just automatically see each other on the same team.
Yeah.
One of them mentioned Australia, I believe, being very low Christian. I think there was like 1 to 3% or something.
Yeah.
And I've never heard that before. I was like, no way. There's not with Hillsong. They're like, they all go to Hillsong. But if you have 10 to 20,000 people coming in every year, I mean, even if you have a huge mega church like that, I mean, you're talking about you need multiple mega churches coming in every year.
Well, just think 10% of 20,000 people.
Yeah.
That would be huge.
Exactly.
Just in that, and likely it'll kind of filter out through some of them, but some of them land and don't get plugged in.
Exactly.
And so anyway, so just kind of thinking that way, that's another reason where it's like, we need to do this together.
Yeah.
We need to plant churches together. We need to, just have expansion opportunities because, we're losing ground, not gaining ground.
Exactly.
So if you start thinking in some of those kind of terms, it necessitates my other brother who's leading this other church.
Exactly.
I need him. I need more of him, actually.
Yeah.
I need 5 more of him.
Exactly.
More of 100 more of him.
How can we multiply him? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean,
how can we help in that process?
I don't think cloning has quite been discovered enough to where I can clone myself. So, I'm a little sketchy on the ethics of that. Anyway. So, but really, so that's another thing we need to be thinking is like, well, okay, so as we're partnering together, what kind of stuff do we partner with?
Exactly.
And so that's where it necessitates prayer.
Oh, yeah.
Just necessitates, and I think this is where Vanderstelt had his 5 gates of like, hey, it necessitates these things.
That's good.
Church planting is actually one of those as well. Yeah. One of those gates that he talks about.
I need to find this.
I got a graphic for Elson.
Okay.
It's great stuff. And he's actually got a really cool website. I think it's called Saturate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jeff
nice.
Vanderstelt, Saturate. He does lots of resources on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Of this idea of like, hey, how do we reach an area
Yep.
And how do we do that together?
Mm-hmm.
Because those are they necessitate each other.
Exactly.
Right? You have to have those things together and stuff.
Absolutely.
And so anyway, so there's a lot of great thinkers out there. Like I said, New Thing would be another resource to be thinking about this. They're doing a lot of great stuff with different networks in church planting. Christ Together is another one doing that. I mean, there's different organizations. Those are a couple of ones that I really am involved in and stuff.
Yeah.
I just started yesterday kind of a training thing on how do you multiply networks.
Yeah.
Because kind of some of the vision in our area is like, hey, how do we have different networks of pastors getting together?
Yeah.
That will say, hey, how do we work together to reach an area, our part of the city? Like,
exactly.
I'm I want to claim it for Christ. I want to partner for those kind of means and stuff. And what would it look like?
Exactly.
And how do we go about it? What does God want?
Mm-hmm.
What would it look like if He got what He wanted?
Exactly.
And stuff. And so anyway, those are some of those thoughts that I'm thinking about those things all the time.
I hear you. And I regularly think about, it seems like such a simple concept, simple idea for ministers in an area to get together and pray and have these conversations regularly. And then so often, I mean, I'm in a couple of group texts and whatnot, and so often we'll, say, hey, are we getting together just today, right? There's a meeting going on today for some pastors down in my hometown.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so often what happens is we have schedules varying and all this different stuff going on to where we can't get together regularly.
Yeah.
And I love that how you said you have a practice where there's this time slot.
Yeah.
You carved it aside. It's the sacred time slot where each week so many people are coming together. And maybe not everybody's making it each week, but there's a regular priority there that people place on it. I think, I feel like, and this is something, again, kind of going back to your intentionality of setting that time aside. I think if it's not prioritized, then it's so easy to fill that in.
Right.
And it's so easy to let other things pull you away from that.
Yeah.
Because we have to be willing to say, no, I'm going to leave my schedule loose. I'm going to leave it even empty in these slots and not try to intentionally fill it.
Right.
Or allow something to come in and fill it so that we can do this. And I don't know. I mean, everybody, we live in such, I love the idea of moving at the Jesus pace. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, he walked. He took things easy.
Yeah.
But we live in such a fast-paced society, and we're trying to get so much done. If we could just slow down and pull back, I think that would really offer a lot more opportunity for ministers to get together. But that comes with, like you said, prioritizing it, it being a value, right? I think that's big. If your ministry, your church can see that as a value, as part of your commission, right? Part of your
job description.
Exactly.
Right. This is part of what you should be doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is, I think that's something that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes because, like most pastors have some kind of board, sometimes, something that speaks into them like, hey, we want you to do this and this and this. And, that's something I think that we need to work on is like, how do we cast and instill vision that says, no, this is a high value.
Yeah.
Right. Because like you said, there's lots of things you can do. And I always say this.
It's easy.
You know exactly what a person values by two things. You look at their calendar.
Yes.
And you look at their checkbook.
Exactly.
That tells you everything you need to know about a person.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, oh, I'm really into this. I don't see that on your calendar. I don't think you are.
Exactly.
Right. Like, oh, I don't see any money going to that at all. Whether it's church budget, time budget, all that kind of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So, but we need to start, casting vision for that value because, like, if it's not the priority, it's like all your time's going to get scooped up by other things. Okay?
Absolutely.
They might not be evil things.
Yeah, good things.
Yeah, not bad things.
Yeah.
But maybe not the better things.
Exactly.
And stuff. And so that's where I think really, if we can kind of get this idea of like, hey, what would it look like if we had 50 pastors
tithing their time
for this kind of thing? What might happen? What might happen with us doing stuff together? What might that communicate?
Yeah.
To the world that's looking at us, thinking that we're fractured, we're full of disunity,
Exactly.
we don't like each other, they can kind of sense it.
Yeah.
Just like
absolutely.
a kid can sense when mom and dad are fighting, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Kids, they can sense it,
Oh, yeah.
right? They know when it's not right. I think the world can sense it.
Absolutely.
You guys don't even like each other. You don't even get along with each other.
Yeah.
Like you're in competition with each other.
Exactly.
You're Walmart and you're this other Target over
you're
here.
Walmart and Target.
And you're competing. It's like, well, no, that's not how we are.
Yeah.
We're like, I love that. We're Team Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
We're on the same team. We're the Church of the Treasure Valley. We're just but there's only one.
Yeah.
There's only one. And it has different expressions, which is kind of
Which is
beautiful in a way.
valuable.
That's actually the value in the different expressions. And we got some big ones and little ones. And
because some people will fit in and be served better and grow more in a big one, and some people will actually grow more in a little one. Those expressions, different expressions, reach different people.
Yeah.
So we need that. Yeah. Because we're trying to reach everybody.
Every man.
So we need every expression.
You need them all. Like I said, as long as they're gospel based of proclaiming the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and He's the only way we can come to the Father and stuff. Is as long as they're there, it's like, man, we need these different styles and expressions and stuff, and which just kind of gives more fuel of like, hey, we need to work together with even groups that are not like us, so with denominations, I mean, you would at least work with people like you, and that's a good step. Yeah. But really it's like, hey, what would it look like for me to work with someone who's not really even like me? Mm-hmm. Perfectly theologically, perfectly in methodology, exactly, in ecclesiology, right? All those kind of things. Can I even work with those people? And so so even with that, I try to have some intentionality of like, hey, I'm these people are kind of outside of my doctrinal, sweet spot. Yeah. Not in a heretical way. But, there's all these distinctives in all of our different things and stuff. But I can work with others who don't have my distinctives. That's fine. We can get together and worship with them or serve together or pray together. There's all kinds of things that we can do together. Absolutely. Even, going beyond those distinctives and stuff. And same with methodology. It's like, hey, can I do something with a bigger church or a smaller church or there is some nice affinity sometimes with ones like you. Yeah. But that's where I think really a couple of different ways you can work together. It's like, man, if you have a denomination, work with your denomination. Exactly. Do stuff together. Yeah. Like,
a lot of times denominations will intentionally
and they'll do it anyway. Yeah.
That networking. Not everybody takes advantage of it. Right.
Right.
But a lot of times denominations will set that up intentionally because they too see the value and we can do more if we're working together and supporting one another. Yeah. I feel like supporting one another. I really like this concept of just tithing. If you take that time to tithe, right? Yeah. To build relationship and collaboration. I'm just thinking of so many different things that could help solve. I mean, huge, right? I mean, how many pastors feel alone? Exactly. If you look, burnout was one of the biggest things that comes to my mind.
Is we got pastors burning out left and right. We're actually like losing more churches than we're planting. Exactly. And some of that is maybe a good thing, right? Because some churches
may need to go.
Yeah, they might need to be revamped, restarted, moving on and stuff like that, and stuff. But we're losing a lot to burnout, like a good leaders, like one we want to still be on the team and stuff. And some of that is because like, man, they're alone. They don't have anyone.
Exactly. And we definitely, whether or not there are some churches that it may be healthier for them to close doors, it is not healthier. It's not a good sign of health that we're not planting more. Right. Than we're losing.
So so we got to work at, fostering. And I think this is another thing we can do together. Like, how do we build out some residencies where we can find younger leaders and plug them into places where they can learn and do ministry and stuff like that. And sometimes it might be more effective if we did some of these things together. Exactly. So I guess like one example is like me and you working on the Boise Underground together and, working at this decentralized microchurchy type movement. Yeah. And we figured out, hey, you know what? Oh, you're working with leaders? Yeah. I'm working with leaders. Oh, and he's working with leaders.
Exactly.
Why don't we do something together? Yep. So I love that. Like that just makes sense, you know, and we can kind of share resources. That's another thing you can do. Exactly. Right? There's only so many resources out there. Yeah. And I don't need to have the same thing that you have on every single thing. Exactly. So time, leadership, resources, that's just one of the advantages. Health. Exactly. Of working together, like sometimes there's not many people I can share, personal things with.
Yeah.
I do want to model that within our own church, and we have groups set up to where we're going to be accountable and share some of those things. But there's the Bible kind of uses this term, and it's towards Christ and stuff. There's a fellowship of suffering.
Yeah.
There's this idea of fellowship when we're going through similar things.
Exactly.
When I'm hanging out with other pastors, they know what I'm going through. Absolutely. They know. I don't think about suffering.
Yeah. And you can think about this in different job titles as well.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, my wife is a teacher now, right?
Yeah.
Teachers understand the struggles that teachers have. 100%. Coaches, right? If you're a sports coach, you understand the struggle that other coaches have.
Yes.
If you're working in the military, you understand.
Yes.
I mean, there is a camaraderie there, right? Because there is that fellowship of suffering through basic traying and all the different things that you have to go through.
Yeah. So I really think that's important for us to think of as ministry leaders, pastors, all that kind of, like I said, whatever labels you want to throw in there, because like we're going through stuff. It's not like we're sitting there and everyone in our church always gets along and they love each other so well, and
everyone loves you,
and everyone loves me.
Sings their praise.
Like, oh yeah, Dusty, they have their t-shirts with my face on it, like that's
always telling you how, sending you emails, how
that was
encouraging your message
wonderful. That was the best thing I've ever. Right? I mean, that's just not what life is. And our kids, they're always obeying perfectly, right?
Exactly.
Like our kids are perfect.
They're angels.
They're angels, right?
Angels, yeah.
Yeah, they never do anything wrong.
Haven't you ever heard the term PK?
Yeah.
That means little angel,
little
right?
Angel. I think that's the same. Right? And so anyway, so we go through all that stuff, like just normal, like when it comes down to it, we're very just normal people.
Yeah.
We're called into something, but we're just normal people with difficulties and struggles and temptations.
Yeah.
We sin ourselves.
Yeah.
And
don't talk about that.
Right. And it's nice.
Yeah.
To have some guys, like I said, and some of these guys, like I've been doing this for like a decade with.
Yeah.
And so man, I can trust them.
Yeah.
I can trust them.
That's so.
And they care for me.
Yeah.
Like I said, how many people are caring for us?
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's some, and there's a lot of great people in our churches, all that kind of stuff. But there's something unique and special about, like, hey, here's one of the benefits of partnering.
Yeah.
Is you get to hang out with others that are a fellowship.
Yeah.
And we're doing this together. There's a camaraderie, like you said, not only in the suffering part, but I think in mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Like it's a cool thing when you're knee with someone, and then you're out doing stuff with someone, serving in a way, or leading, or teaching, or equipping and stuff. There's like, oh man, we're doing this together.
Yeah.
And you kind of get a glimpse. I think you get a glimpse of the kingdom of God.
Absolutely.
Right. And when you're in like the kingdom of God moments, you're like, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
And other people can, I think, see that too.
Absolutely.
So what would it look like if we were doing kingdom of God stuff all the time, regularly with each other in a variety of ways? Okay. Exactly. And I'm not saying we have to merge all churches together into one, right? And have one leader to rule them all.
We're losing the distinctives. We're losing all that. Yeah.
But like man, there's some really cool things when I can do some things with people. Like, why are you even hanging out with that person? It's like, like that's just kingdom stuff.
Exactly.
And anyway, that it all takes. I mean, I guess one of the really most important thing. It takes intentionality.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to, and this is for every ministry.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to do it or not going to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is it
going to
be a
plan
priority?
for it? I'm going to plan for it. I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm gonna make that call.
Yeah.
Like, are you making a call to another pastor?
Yeah.
Or another leader to say, hey, let's meet up for coffee. Let's grab lunch.
Yeah.
Hey, come pray with me.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the kind of things that we need to have.
Absolutely.
And we can just, like, that takes initiatives. Like, someone has to do that.
Exactly.
Like, if everyone's just waiting, like, oh, I would do it until I just need another pastor to call me. Like, we're all just sitting there twiddling our thumbs. It's like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Pick up the phone, send a text.
Exactly.
Send
an email
or a letter through
snail mail,
snail mail, pigeon, whatever it takes,
right?
Carry a pigeon, if that's what it takes. but it just takes that initiative, right? Like, hey, I'm gonna do this. Now that was one of those convictions where it's like, okay, I'm gonna try taking some initiative in that. Okay, and I don't do that perfectly, or there's probably some people I could do it better with and stuff like that, but if you set up regular patterns where you're like, I'm just going to regularly connect with people, that helps. Those predictable patterns. But then also that initiative, like, hey, I'm going to make a phone call here and there. Like, I'm going to go out of my way.
Yeah.
I know I'm busy. I know you're busy.
Yeah.
but someone has to take that initiative.
Exactly.
And stuff. And so it's like, might as well be you.
Yeah.
And stuff. Anyway, so those are a lot of things that I kind of think about regularly. And then how do we build that out? How do we have this kind of, because there's with ministry, there's always kind of two parts. There's always the scheduled, the planned.
Yeah.
Right. But then there's always like the space between. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
And there should be. There should be space between. I think that's another one of those things with your schedule and your calendar, right?
Yeah.
Like leave room.
Yeah.
Between.
Do you actually have margin?
Exactly.
Potentially for
building margin.
And I know that's hard because there's lots of demands as a pastor. Probably too many.
Yeah.
Okay. Which might make you think, oh, maybe I don't need to do this, and maybe I need to scale that back, and maybe that's not as important.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so anyway, but those are things you're gonna have to weigh. As an individual leader. Like, I'm not gonna tell you what to do with your time. You got enough people telling you what to do with your time. Right. I know that for sure stuff. But anyway, those are definitely just at least things to consider and think about. Yeah. That's just kind of been my thought process, right? As I've been like, okay, if this is true, then I need to live this way, and I need to spend my time doing these kind of things.
Yeah.
And trying to model that and embrace that and bring others on board for that. Casting vision is just another thing.
Exactly.
Right? Because I think most pastors deep down are like, yeah, I probably should be doing things with other guys, with other leaders.
Yeah.
It's like I probably should be doing it, but I never saw how to do it. Okay, it's like it's like the guy who grew up, and he didn't get to see a good marriage happen.
Yeah,
his mom and dad.
He wants a good marriage.
He wants one, but he's like, I never saw it. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is somewhat true in here. So I think even part of this is I guess talking about younger pastors. We need to bring guys alongside.
Yeah.
And get them involved in this. Be like, hey, this is important. Like I said, I was just in Atlanta, kind of doing we had some breakout stuff, and one of the groups starts like, man, they're kind of getting older.
Yeah.
Like I think all but one of the guys was like over 55. Okay, and some of them are like in their 60s.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and nothing wrong with being that old, because I want you around.
Yeah, exactly.
More I've seen, I was like, I want to hang out with you guys and stuff. But it's like, hey, you got to look around the room, realize there's not a lot of young people.
Going to?
Yeah, we got
going to.
Yeah, so there's that disciple. Like we're disciple makers.
Yeah,
like as pastors, that's what we should be doing, and we can disciple in this way too.
Exactly.
And I think we have to.
Yeah.
If we really want to see this work going, because sometimes what happens is you might start something, but the fruit actually comes over here. Right? I forget who said. I think it's maybe Todd Wilson, where he uses this phrase where I want to see my fruit grow on other people's trees.
Oh, come on!
That one every time I hear it, I'm like, dude, that is so good. That is so kingdom.
Yeah,
that's so Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to see my fruit growing on someone else's tree, and just be okay with that.
Yeah,
and they can claim the fruit all they want. Right?
That's so good.
I'm fine with that. I don't care. I just want to see the fruit of the kingdom. Right? And the realization is like, that person might be more fruitful than me.
Yeah.
One of the things I had to realize as a leader, because like when you're younger and you get called and you have these kind of visions of grandeur of like, oh, I'll be speaking here and at this conference. Yeah, I'll be really cool and big church, all that kind of stuff. And as I've grown older, some of the things like, man, I'm not as good of a leader as that person is. Right? Like, you got the parable of the talents.
Oh, come on now.
And it's like, what if I'm only a one talent person? That's fine. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah. Cause he didn't get rebuked for only having
it. That wasn't the rebuke.
It's how he used it.
What are you doing with what you got? And so I think as we're thinking of being pastors, of like, hey, how do I do this? And then also, how do I spur one another on to good work? How do I spur you on to take what you got as well? Because like I said, I think one of the best things we can do as pastors is encourage one another.
Exactly.
Because we don't always get that.
Absolutely.
And stuff. And so anyway, so those things kind of go together, and it's like, man, I want to see my fruit growing in other places, because it might grow.
Yeah.
Even when I planted, one of the things I really felt God kind of lead me to is like, Dusty, you might not even do this that great, but I want you to try. I want you to give your life to this, and then it might actually, people coming and taking what you have and actually growing off of it is probably going to be even better than what you're doing. And are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah. I mean, I have to be, because that's what he told me.
That's what he told me to do. Right?
So I have to be, but I mean, there's pride and ego in there as well.
No, absolutely. And you have to wrestle with that. Yeah.
I want these things, and really, with church unity and stuff, partnership, that takes a lot of, you got to lay pride and ego down.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thing, because if we come
that's one of the reasons it's not
that's
easy.
One of the reasons
it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons it doesn't happen very often, is because I'm coming with my ego and my agenda, because I'm building my little kingdom.
Yeah.
And I got to lay those down because I got to build the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
And that takes just a level of humility.
Yeah.
You know, which I've been blessed to really see a lot of humility. But I've also seen some not so humility stuff either, right? Like you see the price of it, and you feel it sometimes, right? You're in the room and you're like talking about stuff and like, hey, what kind of stuff we can do? And it's like, well, I really want to do this. And deep down, you're like, well, I want to do this because it helps me out.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of pastors won't commit to that because, well, that really doesn't serve the direct need of my church.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, well, I mean, I want you to consider that because you are the one overseeing your people. Yeah. You got to consider it at some level, but also it's like,
but at some level, are we also considering the kingdom?
Right. Overall. Yeah. Is this building up the kingdom, even if it's not my little kingdom? Yeah.
Are you willing to take, I'm going to use this tithe again, right?
Yeah.
Would you be willing to shrink your kingdom 10% if you knew the rest of the kingdom would grow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, would you be willing to take away 10% of everything coming into your church, 10% the people, the finances, everything that's coming in, the programs, everything that you're able to do? Would you be willing to take away 10%?
Yeah.
If you knew that the kingdom in your area, the churches in your area, the church of your area would end up expanding and growing.
Come on.
More than that 10%.
Yeah. That's kind of a heart check right there. Because I think honestly, some people might be like, I don't think I would, right? Maybe sometimes I've said that and done that, like even kind of those underlying motivations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's stuff we gotta consider.
And I feel like prayer, and I think it's so important that you start with that foundation. You start with that foundation of being in your word. You start with that foundation of prayer, praying with one another, because a lot of these things you have to discern.
Right.
A lot of these things will take discernment. And if you're leaving it to your feelings or to the different priorities and habits that you've built, then you won't be able to make that right call when time comes.
Yeah.
You need to be able to lean in and feel the leading of God in that moment and be able to talk about that with other people and talk it out, because other pastors understand that struggle as well. Right. And so there's someone you can talk with. There's some peers you can talk with about, no, this is the real struggle. This is what we're looking at. This is why I have a hard time making this step, and talking out whether or not, okay, am I acting out of fear in my flesh?
Right.
Or is this God telling me to hold back?
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, sometimes we can be too quick to label it as, this isn't right. This isn't what God would have me do. And we haven't really checked with.
Right. Yeah. It's actually, my feelings inside of stuff. Yeah. And I think with that, I think this idea of open-handedness and generosity needs to kind of flow out of that.
Absolutely.
Like that needs to be kind of our response. And, I know one of my kind of mentors, and thinking of this, mentioned him earlier and stuff. And he's like, man, you just got to be open-handed with stuff. Like, give stuff away.
Yeah.
It's not even your stuff.
Wow. Say that again.
Yeah.
It's not even your stuff. It's
not your stuff.
Remember.
And I think, like something that we kind of been able to see, even currently, like we have this small little building, and we got a Spanish speaking church.
Yeah.
That's just a church plant that's just kind of starting up that we get to use it.
Nice.
When we were building this way back in the day, Discovery Church, now they're like, hey, you can use this building for free.
Wow.
And so we had a space for a while. I think we were almost in there for a year.
Yeah.
And that was modeled to me.
Yeah.
That open-handedness.
Wow.
And they've had multiple churches in there.
Yeah.
And so now I think we're hopefully going to be getting an African church meeting in our, like an Anglican African church kind of doing a Bible study in our building as well.
That's
and
so cool.
And because this is a value to me, and it's like, hey, just be open-handed. Like, I'm not asking anything of them except for maybe clean up afterwards, right? You kind of clean up your mess.
That would be a good idea,
and stuff. But it's like, hey, like what kind of stuff can we have? Like, we have these assets, we have these resources, and we can work together and say, hey, I got this building, I got this space, I'm not using it this time. Why don't you use it? And stuff. And anyway, I think some of those things kind of flow, like the practical flow outs of doing those things. Like I said, with groups, like neither one of those groups are are in my denomination.
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything, like I'm not getting a financial kickback from them.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, man, you're a kingdom brother. I want to see,
Yeah.
I want to see you flourish.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to see, especially with those kind of groups, like
Team Jesus.
I don't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
But I know in my neighborhood, there's a bunch of Spanish speakers.
Yeah.
And I'm friends with some of them, and we come to my church because, they need something Spanish speaking. And so, anyway, that's kind of how it works together and stuff, and just kind of being that open-handedness.
Yeah.
I think needs to kind of flow out of there as well. Just different kind of angles towards the same thing of like, but it's all about the kingdom of how can we live this out
exactly
and stuff. And so,
that's the big question. What would God want to see?
What would He want? Yeah.
And how can we live that out on a kingdom perspective?
Yeah.
Right. From that God view of the church.
Yeah.
Of Boise or the church
wherever you live.
Yeah.
Right?
Wherever you're at. The church of Atlanta. Right.
Yeah.
The church of Orlando, Sacramento.
Right.
They still have churches in California, right?
I think they do. I sure hope so.
I'm just kidding. Now, some of me and my wife both know some really fantastic churches out there.
Yeah. Amen.
And what's it called? I think it's great when we can rejoice knowing that good things are happening. That's another thing that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Where I was like,
celebrate.
That's one of those big benefits of talking with and being in relationship with other believers.
Yeah.
You get to celebrate and hear about what they're doing. And I don't know about you, but that just excites me.
Oh,
that fires me up when I'm hearing what God is doing over here and over there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you want a practical way of, hey, how can I actually start walking in this more?
Yeah.
Celebrate other churches in your church.
Oh, wow. Come on.
Right? I know there's a church in Boise, I think it's Summit. And I think most Sundays, they'll specifically pray for another church.
Yeah.
I love that. They're taking time.
Right.
In their, kind of main gathering.
And they're showing that is a value.
That's a value.
Come on now.
That's a great practical way, right? Yeah. Anyway, there's all these kind of different ways that can kind of just filter down into the life of your church and stuff. That's a great way. Like I said, model
so good.
Get with another pastor, plan a joint worship time. Yeah. Or a joint serving project or something, or joint prayers. There's all kinds of things you can do collaboratively that are simple, that won't take a lot of money.
Yeah.
But you'll get a chance to just engage and stuff with that. Go on a mission trip with someone.
Exactly.
There's tons of things you can do.
So many.
So many things and stuff. And so, but we just gotta think that way. Asking those questions, like, there's a lot of weeks where I'm just like, okay, what does God want? Yeah. Like that just question is just ingrained in my brain.
That's so good.
How can I actually get that? What he wants, and stuff. And we know, it's His desire. Yeah. That all should come to repentance. So I know that, right? It's right in the Word,
right?
I know that. Okay, so
can we keep with those simple things, right? The things that are clear.
Okay, like I said, all goes back. Yeah, that's why I need to partner with.
Exactly,
because that's how it's gonna really fully happen. Yeah, in our area. So
and we don't need to work out all the details and figure out some new special way of making it happen. Yeah. He's also already given us some ways to move about that. Yeah. And a lot of that does start with prayer. Mm-hmm. You look all throughout Scripture, and a lot of the moves of God started.
I wouldn't say a lot of them.
Prayer.
I would say all of them, right? Right? Like I'm pretty sure with every single one
has that component in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So absolutely, that's so cool. I think walking away from this conversation, I would want to challenge people. This is a challenge for myself, and I want to look more closely, and say, am I tithing? Am I at least tithing my time and my money towards collaboration and unity, towards kingdom outside of my little sphere? Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I think, what you put your time and your money towards, it expresses where your heart's at. So can we at least tithe our time praying for other ministers, meeting with other ministers, ministries, believers outside of our church and what we're doing? Can we put some time towards that? Yeah. And can we also direct some of our funds that way as well? And that can that can be harder, right? Yeah. I mean, times are hard right now. That can be harder, but even if it's just directing a little bit at a time and building up towards more, I think of, the widow with the copper coin.
Absolutely.
It's not so much about how much your money is going to make a difference, but where is your heart at?
Yeah, that's huge.
Right? Where is your heart at? And are you showing God, I value this. I value what you value, and I'm gonna invest into it.
And we're gonna invest into it. Yeah.
So,
Investment.
Absolutely. And then I would say tie that time, tie that money, and create margin. Unity takes that margin. And so whether that is it ends up being this is a value really written into the bylaws of your church, or this is, a personal value. This is the way you construct your calendar, creating margins so that you are able to spend that time with others.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking also the creativity that comes like when you're spending time with others.
Right.
You get to hear what other people are doing.
Yeah.
It sparks.
Yeah, that kind of cross-pollination. Sometimes, sometimes that's great. That's kind of one benefit. Like if you're in the room with someone and maybe they think different.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden they say this and it sparks this idea over here, and then you can maybe even do something together. I love that idea of cross-pollination.
Just yesterday. It was yesterday. We were on the phone. I was like, I don't know. Somebody said something and it made me think of this.
Yes. Yeah, right.
Anyway, it was a new idea. So I was like, oh, okay, good. So, all right, Dusty, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being willing to share your time with me here. It's always great, always good conversation.
Yeah, man.
And like I said, I know you think you're below average, but I really value every single time we've been able to sit down. You give me so much to chew on and to be excited about moving forward with.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate
that. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for joining us for the inHoPE podcast. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Remember, we want you to be part of the conversation. So comment, like, share, and follow. Also, we want you to consider being a ministry partner with us. For as little as $2 a month, you can help continue this podcast and other ministries that teach about unity and invest in collaborative efforts. Connect with us via social media throughout the week, and we look forward to seeing you next week on Monday on the inHoPE podcast.